Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a collection of stories that have been shaping the moral landscape for, get this, over 2,500 years. And we're not just talking about your average simple fables here. Oh no, these are intricate tales filled with talking animals, prideful slaves, and treasure that literally kills. They're called the Jhatka tales, and they're designed to expose some of the most fundamental and, yeah, often uncomfortable truths about human nature.
And look, that's a fair question, right? In our age of AI and space travel, what can we really learn from stories about monkeys and crows that are 2,500 years old? Well, the surprising answer is pretty much everything that actually matters. Because as we're about to see, the technology changes, but the human operating system, it really doesn't. The core vices these tales warn us about, pride, greed, and just plain foolishness, they're just as alive and well in boardrooms and on social media today as they were in ancient forests and palaces. These aren't just stories, they're basically psychological blueprints.
All right, let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First up, we'll get our bearings and figure out what the Jhatka tales actually are. Then, we're going to dive deep into 4 incredible tales. We'll explore the corrupting nature of pride, the self-destructive power of greed, and the surprising danger of a foolish friend. And then, to wrap it all up, we'll connect the dots and see how these ancient warnings are, well, maybe more relevant now than ever before. So, first things first, what exactly are these Jhatka tales? To really get why they're so powerful, we have to understand where they came from. These aren't just any old folk tales. They are a cornerstone of Buddhist literature. So what are we dealing with here? Well, the Jhatka tales are a massive collection. We're talking over 500 stories in total. They were originally written in Pali, which is an ancient language related to Sanskrit. And the really crucial part is that these aren't just campfire stories. They're a part of the Tripitaka, the foundational scripture of Buddhism. So you can think of each tale as a kind of snapshot, a single episode from a past life of the man who would one day become Gautama Buddha. Now, the central character in all these stories is really key. In his past lives, the Buddha is called the Bodhisattva, which basically means one who is destined for enlightenment. But here's the really fascinating part. He isn't always some wise prince or a holy sage. Nope. Sometimes he's a pigeon, a monkey king, or even just a regular merchant. And this variety is a huge part of the teaching. It shows that the path to wisdom isn't reserved for one type of person, or even one species. It's a path anyone can walk from anywhere. At the end of the day, these tales really have one main purpose: to teach. They're basically moral allegories. In every story, the Bodhisattva is put into some kind of tough spot, a real test of character that's designed to highlight a core virtue, like compassion or integrity. But, and this is important, they also work in reverse. Just as powerfully as they praise these virtues, they serve as these stark, unforgettable warnings against their opposites: arrogance, greed, and dishonesty. Okay, let's jump into our first story, and this one is a brilliant look at how quickly pride can corrupt someone, especially when it's tied to power they haven't actually earned. This is the tale of the haughty slave. So picture this. We're in the ancient city of Benares. There's an elderly landowner, and he's worried his young wife will just waste his fortune after he dies. So he decides to bury his treasure. He takes his most trusted slave, a man named Nanda, with him as the only witness. His final instruction to Nanda is simple. When my son is all grown up, you show him where I buried this. So years go by. The son grows up and asks Nanda to show him where his inheritance is. But then, something really strange starts to happen. Every single time Nanda leads the young master out to the forest and stands on the exact spot where the treasure is buried, his whole personality just flips. He becomes, and this is a quote from the original text, puffed up by the money. He starts yelling, throwing insults at his own master. Now the young man, he's confused, but he's wise. He doesn't fight back. Instead, he goes to get advice from the Bodhisattva, who in this life is a wise landowner and was a friend of his father. The Bodhisattva immediately gets what's going on. He understands the psychology at play here. He realizes the slave's arrogance isn't coming from inside him, it's being triggered by how close he is to all that wealth. His advice is simple: the next time Nanda starts his yelling, just physically pull him away from that spot and start digging right there. And of course, the young man does exactly that, finds his family treasure, and the moral becomes crystal clear. Sometimes, pride isn't some deep-seated character flaw. It can just be a temporary inflation caused by your circumstances, a dangerous illusion of power. All right, so we've seen what pride can do. Now let's switch gears to a different, but just as destructive vice: the danger of unchecked greed. This is the story of the pigeon and the crow. In this story, the Bodhisattva is a pigeon, and he's living a nice, peaceful life in a straw basket right inside a master cook's kitchen. One day, a crow is flying by, and he gets a whiff of all the rich smells of fish and meat, and he is just filled with this intense craving. He sees the pigeon, and a plan starts to form in his head. He's going to become friends with this pigeon just so he can get access to all that delicious food in the kitchen.
And this slide really lays out the whole conflict perfectly. On one hand, you have the pigeon. He represents a life of hard work and self-control. He goes out every day and eats grass seeds. He lives in harmony. But then you have the crow. He's completely driven by his cravings. He wants that forbidden human food. The pigeon even warns him, saying, hey, man's food will not agree with you. But the crow just doesn't listen. He even fakes a stomachache so he can stay behind in the kitchen because his mind is totally set on stealing that fish.
And predictably, the crow's greed leads straight to his doom. The second the cook steps out, the crow makes his move, but he's clumsy and loud. The cook hears him, rushes back in, catches him, and the punishment is, well, it's shockingly severe. He plucks every single feather from the crow's body, marinates him in a mix of ginger and salt, and throws him, still alive, back into the basket. The Bodhisattva comes back to find his friend in agony and delivers this brutal moral just before the crow dies. A totally tragic end, brought on entirely by his refusal to control his own desires.
Okay, this next section is fascinating. We're going to look at two super short but really powerful tales that drive home the exact same point, that a foolish friend, no matter how good their intentions are, can be way more dangerous than a smart enemy.
Just look at these two situations. In the first one, a son sees a mosquito on his father's bald head. With the best intentions in the world, he grabs an axe to swat the bug and ends up killing his own father. In the second story, the Bodhisattva is a monkey king. A gardener asks the monkeys to water his young trees. The monkey king, trying to be helpful and conserve water, gives a really dumb order. Pull up each little tree, check how big its roots are, and give more water to the ones with bigger roots. The result? The monkeys completely destroy the entire garden. Both stories show the exact same thing: total disaster, born not from any evil intent, but from pure, well-meaning ignorance.
The big takeaway is summed up in this one powerful line. Think about it. An intelligent enemy is, in a way, predictable. You can figure out what they might do based on logic. But a foolish friend? They're a total wild card. They're completely unpredictable, and their ability to cause accidental harm is pretty much limitless. It's a tough lesson, right? It reminds us that just meaning well isn't nearly enough if you don't have the wisdom to back it up.
And now we come to our final, and maybe the most dramatic story of all. If the crow's tale was about personal greed, this is about avarice on an epic scale. It shows how the lust for wealth can set off a horrifying domino effect of destruction. The setup here is pure magic. A Brahmin has this secret charm, the Vidabha, that lets him, at just the right astrological moment, summon a shower of treasure right out of the sky. He's traveling with his student, who is the Bodhisattva, when they get captured by a gang of 500 robbers. The robbers decide to hold the Brahmin for ransom, and they send the Bodhisattva to go get the money. Before he leaves, the Bodhisattva begs his master not to use the charm, warning him it will only lead to disaster. But the Brahmin, he's impatient, and he uses it anyway. He summons the treasure and pays off the robbers, but soon they're captured by a second gang of 500 robbers. This second gang demands the Brahmin make it rain treasure again. When he says he has to wait a year for the right stars, they kill him. Then this new gang hunts down and kills the first gang to steal their treasure. But it doesn't stop there. The victorious robbers then fight among themselves until only two are left. And finally, those last two plot against each other. One poisons the food, while the other one waits with a sword. In the end, they both die.
Just let that number sink in for a second. The Brahmin's one single act of impatience didn't just get him killed, it directly led to the deaths of 1,000 robbers. That's 1,001 lives, completely wiped out by the lust for a treasure that, in the end, didn't belong to anyone. It's just a devastating chain reaction.
When the Bodhisattva finally returns with the ransom money, this is what he finds: a trail of pure carnage. He follows the path of bodies, slowly piecing together the whole horrifying story. And his final thought perfectly captures the moral of it all. When you use the wrong methods to get what you want, the result isn't gain. It's total ruin, for you and for everyone else who gets swept up in your greed.
So,
Okay, let's step back from these ancient stories for a moment. After seeing these pretty intense examples of human failure, what are the lessons that stick with us? How do these warnings about pride, greed, and foolishness still echo in our world right now? When you boil it all down, these stories give us a masterclass in four huge vices. We see the temporary pride of the slave, an arrogance that wasn't tied to his character but to his situation. We see the personal greed of the crow, a craving so strong it made him completely deaf to wise advice. We see the destructive folly of the sun and the monkeys, proving that ignorance with good intentions can be just as deadly as pure evil. And finally, we see the apocalyptic avarice of the robbers, a lust for wealth so powerful it just consumed everything and everyone in its path.
And that really brings us to the final and most crucial question. See, these stories aren't just artifacts from the past, they're mirrors. When you look at our modern world, at our politics, our economy, our technology, which of these ancient warnings feels the most urgent to you? Is it the quiet corruption of pride, fueled by status and power? Is it the headstrong chase for personal greed that ignores all the long-term consequences? Or is it the catastrophic potential of well-meaning foolishness, where good intentions literally pave the road to disaster? The Jhatka tales don't give us the answer for our time, but what they do is give us the perfect framework for asking all the right questions.